All right, good afternoon, everyone. This is CJ, and it's that time of the week again for another edition of Hanging with Harley. Very excited to be joined by Harley Schlanger from LaRouche Pack. As everyone knows, V is on a well-deserved vacation, and so have the honor and privilege of riding shotgun today along with Harley. So, Harley, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. We just had a pretty bad thunderstorm here, but it seems to have cleared up, so everything's fine.
Excellent, excellent. So, where would you like to begin? Domestically, here on the U.S. side, we're seeing again just complete questionable actions by Congress, by the Senate, and making impacts globally. So, I'll let you begin.
Well, let's look at why this happened. I mean, a lot of people are saying, how could the Congress have so overwhelmingly voted for sanctions? There was nothing new that Russia did that threatened the United States, number one. Number two, it was the opposite. The Putin-Trump meeting led to some very good cooperation in Syria, in which you now have ISIS and Al Qaeda on the run. And the most important thing, I think, besides the US Russian cooperation there, is that the Trump administration ended the policy of Obama of arming and training the so called moderate rebels. And there's no such thing as moderate rebels in Syria. Good development, so why now? And what you see is this is why we've had nothing since Trump has been elected except Russia, Russia, Russia. The very intent of Trump, the fact that he announced publicly his intention of breaking the Obama policy of provocation of Russia, caused a profound and psychotic response from the deep state networks, the CIA, the FBI, British intelligence at the forefront, and their intention was to stop it. And that's all we've had with absolutely no real story. There's nothing there. There's no evidence. There's just so-called intelligence assessments based on anonymous sources, based on non-existent reporting that there was something done to wreck the election. Now, what came out in the last week, I think we had this last week, was the VIPS report, the Ray McGovern group, Bill Binney, the former NSA director of cyber security and so on, that they put
Uh-huh.
out a report saying there was no hack, that it was a leak. And then there was a fake hack that was done to make like Russia hacked the DNC records. Now, the fact that this is out publicly, and it's not conspirophiles who put it out, it's former top intelligence officials, respected officials, but it's gotten almost no coverage in the United States. So it shows you that the intent of the coup is to destroy US-Russia relations and to destroy Trump if he tries to pursue them. I think it was interesting in his signing statement where Trump ended up signing the sanctions bill. He basically said this is going to destroy US-Russian relations and it takes away his power as president. He's absolutely right. So I think that's the place you have to start. The Congress committed an act of treason. Now, I just want to add one other point to this. Why does the Congress do this? Two of the leading opponents of this policy, Dana Rohrabacher, a California Republican, and Duncan from Tennessee, another Republican, have come under incredible attack. Rohrabacher's being targeted. They're sending Soros busloads of people to his town meetings. His top foreign intelligence aide was just fired from the, I think, the House Intelligence or House Foreign Relations Committee, a man named Behrens. And then in Duncan's case, they brought up a 5-year-old charge against his son that his son was illegally on the payroll. And Duncan, who was one of the 3 people who voted against the Sanctions Act in the House, just announced he's retiring. So thuggery, blackmail, lies, deep state action, that's why this thing happened.
Yeah, just truly amazing. And did you want to break that in terms of the firing that occurred and the memo that was put out, specifically mentioning the deep state, specifically mentioning Islamic terror, and then for him to get fired from that, I don't understand that, Harley.
Well, you're dealing with a very endangered group that still has a lot of power. The Wall Street London financial interests, and their tentacles go into the intelligence community. Remember, there's been a lot of privatization of intelligence over the last 30 years. This goes back to Executive Order 12333, signed during the Reagan years. It was pushed through by Bush Sr. And if people want to actually look at what made the deep state even worse and more secure in their ability to act against the interests of the United States, that's a good place to start. Executive Order 12333, which allowed for privatization of intelligence operations and also wet works. And you see that in terms of what we've grown accustomed to now with the Iraq, with Syria, with the so-called mercenary forces, with the hiring of consultants, the billions of dollars going to these networks, referred to as the military-industrial complex. It's just gotten worse. So if someone goes against that, you're going to be targeted by the media, you're going to be targeted by the leaders of both political parties, and that's really what we're dealing with. And so the firing of this, I believe he was an NSA official, or maybe it was National Security Council official.
Correct.
Uh,
Yeah, national security
yeah, by
advisor.
McMaster, for telling the truth. That's the way that the situation is running now.
Now, Harley, we're starting to witness a little, not a little bit, significant blowback from the EU, from Germany in regards to these sanctions. What's the impact going to have regarding trade and the economy here in the U.S.?
Well, the German situation is interesting because there's an escalation against Germany right now at precisely the moment that the foreign minister, Sigmar Gabriel, probably should work on a way of moving toward an end of sanctions with Russia. We need to have détente with Russia. And what comes up in the middle of this, besides the sanctions, there's the attack on the German automobile sector, the whole automobile sector. And the automobile sector is the key to the strength of the German economy, not just because they produce so many good cars, but because of the engineering quality that goes into their work, the machine tool sector. That's still been maintained in Germany. And so you have a war being waged against Germany. And this goes back, this is not Trump, this goes back to the Obama period again. So if Germany doesn't continue to play the role given to it by NATO and EU, which is to be the full enforcer of the British and American policy, they're going to get slammed. Now, we're seeing people wake up in Germany. For example, in the last couple of days, I've been working with people to make sure that this VIPS report gets out in Germany. And we should have some very public developments in the next few days with the possibly Ray McGovern being interviewed on German television. Some other things in the works. I don't want to sabotage it by reporting it now. But there is a reaction
Sure,
in
sure.
Germany against this. It's occurring at the same time where the Germans are very uneasy about the situation in the European Union. And one of the reasons they're uneasy is that the EU has just initiated a process where the EU can declare a financial emergency and prevent people from withdrawing money from their banks. This is now being worked into law in the European Union. It's on top of the existing bail-in regulations. What it says is that if there is a determination there's a systemic crisis, then the EU can send out the word that people will not be allowed access to their bank accounts, to their ATMs, to their saving accounts, to anything. And this is obviously an attack on anybody who saved money. So
Correct.
it's hard in Germany. So I think we may see some shifts here, but we've got to get a shift in the United States. And I think the only way it's going to happen is if, since President Trump has said he's not happy with what's being done, go out on the stump, do campaign-style rallies, call on the American people to burn the rear ends of the congressmen, because otherwise Congress is going to take away the last bit of power the president has. And that's really what, since they can't impeach him, or they're not about to impeach him yet, since there's no evidence that he did anything wrong, what they're doing is a mobilization into the Congress. And by the way, we'll be doing an expose of one other part of this. A key figure in the sanctions bill is this guy, Bill Browder, who ran the Hermitage Capital Fund, which was one of the looting funds that during the privatization period came in and stole money left and right from the Russian people. And when Putin moved against the oligarchs, they moved against Hermitage Capital. And what Browder did is he had a so-called accountant, who he's calling a lawyer, who was supposedly investigating this, who ended up imprisoned, and then he died while in prison. That's this guy Magnitsky. Now, Browder wrote a book in which he argues that Putin is the world's richest man, that Putin has $200 billion, that Putin is a criminal, a killer. Browder hired a very prominent Russian filmmaker to film about this. And the filmmaker was an until he started reading the material that he was given from Browder. And he ended up making a film which Browder is now suppressing, because it said the whole basis of the Magnitsky Act of putting sanctions on individual Russians for this alleged attack on Browder's company was a fraud. And yet this guy Browder is now strutting like a peacock in front of the House and the Senate, testifying and being used to justify the anti-regulation. So I think these are some things that if people know the story, if they get the background, and then the president calls them into action, maybe we can get a fire lit or some tar and feather in these congressional town meetings. So the Congress begins to realize that the American people will not.
Correct. Yeah, you broke up there, Harley, like the last 5 seconds.
So I think this is what we've got to demand, what listeners to this program are demanding. The White House, tell the president you support him if he goes out and starts jailing these people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Harley, there's some other players in regards to this coup attempt against Trump. And I wanted to see if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit regarding the angle as far as the British and their hand in playing part of this as well.
What's interesting, I had a meeting today with someone from Afghanistan, an official from Afghanistan, who is a British citizen, even though he's from Afghanistan and serves the Afghan government. And what he said is that everyone he meets in Germany has no idea that the British are still big players in the world, and that the US uses British intelligence to shape its policy. And that's absolutely the case. I mean, Browder, just to take Browder as an example, he's a British citizen. His grandfather was the head of the Communist Party USA in the 1930s and 40s. He became a British citizen. His hedge fund, or his fund rather, was set up with money from Edmund Safra, a British-Israeli money launderer. It was backed by Hong Kong Shanghai Bank, which is the world's largest dope bank. And so here you have the Brits again involved. He's tied to Fusion GPS, which was the firm that hired.
Yes, correct.
Now, why is that? Well, the City of London is still a leading force in setting global financial policy, because the City of London and Wall Street are essentially totally integrated. You can't separate them. London and Wall Street are the ones who pay the private consortiums that are now under the privatization policies of the US, also in Britain, are taking over the role of government. And so when people complain about government, well, government is the problem because it's being controlled by these private financial interests for their benefit and not for the interests of the people of the nation. And I think this is a really crucial point for people to get. When Trump talks about American greatness and rebuilding America, make America great again, we have to realize this This is not the old America First idea. This is an idea of economic nationalism that goes back to the founding fathers and Alexander Hamilton. And it doesn't mean screw the rest of the world. It means that we're going to be a power that will act in the interest of other nations because that will strengthen our own economy and our own power. So we've got an educational process that we've got to carry out here. And most Americans have no idea. They look at the Queen as an aging prune. They look at Prince Charles as a psycho who talks to plants. And they say, how can this British monarchy be powerful? Well, look at the boards they sit on. Look at the Privy Council. Look at the volume of monetary transactions that are controlled through the City of London, including offshore derivatives, which is the biggest vulnerability in the whole financial system. And if people understand that, then they'll get over their silliness about how the Brits are nothing, the British Empire is nothing. It's a 19th or early 20th century phenomenon. No, it's operative today.
Yeah, truly amazing, truly amazing. And to think of the progress that was made, you're absolutely right. Coming out from those the initial talks that Putin had, with Trump in regards to Syria, in which we know that British special forces played a part in training a lot of those quote unquote moderate rebels.
Yeah, the whole idea of regime change actually comes from Tony Blair. And look at the role Blair played with Bush Jr. and then with Obama. And he's still playing today. Blair is a war criminal. He should have been imprisoned years ago. And yet he was, for most of the last decade, in charge of something called the Quartet, which was the group of nations that was supposedly going to work out an Israel-Palestinian solution. When Blair, if anything, is tied to the source of the problem in the Middle East, which is the British monarchy's establishment of Israel in the first place through funding and sponsorship of the Rothschilds.
Yeah, just truly amazing to witness this occurring, and I agree completely with you. It's a shame that most Americans don't understand truly from a geopolitical perspective of what is happening and the world that's changing around us with the new Silk Road, with the future of economies, and the U.S. does not even have one bit of a stake in in the emerging markets.
Well, and let me just mention one other aspect of the sanctions vote. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, which is probably should be outlawed, they the line that the source of terrorism in the Middle East is Iran, because Iran is funding Hezbollah. And the Russians support Iran. Hezbollah wants to destroy the state of Israel, is the line that AIPAC puts out. Therefore, Russia is anti-Semitic, and the sanctions are necessary. Now, once you have AIPAC running around the halls of Congress saying something's anti-Semitic, the Congress snaps to attention. And this is another factor in why the vote on the sanctions was so overwhelming.
Yeah, what was it? 97%. There was only, ironically enough, Rand Paul voted against it, and so did Bernie Sanders. Those were the only two senators.
2 senators and 3 House members. That's about as unanimous as you can
Right.
get.
Yeah, just truly amazing. Well,
If I were Rand
yeah, go
Paul
ahead.
and Bernie Sanders, I would have a food taster.
Yeah. Well, 2018 is the year that we can make a difference in terms of some of these long-term, deep state operatives. That's why I call them. I don't call them elected officials anymore. They're operatives sitting in D.C. To make those changes. So, Harley, closing thoughts.
Yeah, we can't wait till 2018. We've got to move immediately because the situation is worsening. The financial crisis is building steam. Trump is right. He said relations between the U.S. and Russia have suffered terribly because of this vote. The Russians are being somewhat, but it's keep quiet and pass the ammunition is basically the Russian policy. And so we've got to move quickly, and it means people should let the president know. And you can email the White House, call the White House, know that people will support him if he starts jailing these people, starting with Brennan, Clapper, Comey, fire Mueller, and while you're at it, bring Obama in, because Obama was the one who was presiding over the original Get Trump task force. So I think it can be done. You can go to LaRouchePAC.com and get updates on this. We have some very good material that's been posted, including an interview with Ray McGovern that we did after the VIPs put out this report, definitively proving there was no hacking done. It was a leak. And so this plays into the whole Seth Rich case and everything else.
Excellent. Very good. Very, very true. So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Harley, thank you so much for your words of wisdom, all the work that LaRouche PAC is doing as well. You can visit LaRouchePAC.com. And then also we do cross-post some other articles over to roguemoney.net as well. So, Harley, thank you so much and enjoy your afternoon.
And I hope V is getting a good vacation, some good relaxation in.
I hope so too. So when he gets back, I can take some as well.
Okay, so long.